Well, here we are, Twisted Metal 4, the second major stain on the franchise. It was released in 1999 and was again developed and published by 989 Studios. Critics of the day gave this game scores of either in the mid-70s or below. Some criticized the graphics, saying, while prettier than those of Twisted Metal 3, they aren't nearly as sharp as the graphics in its main competitor, that being Vigilante 8 Second Offense. Others harped on the music. See what I did there? Some critics loved the addition of more Rob Zombie, while others had become annoyed by constantly hearing Dragula on repeat. And others just said the music didn't really draw you in. So clearly Twisted Metal 4 was and still is a divisive title within the franchise. I've read a few articles that were written on this game back in the day, and I keep seeing that Twisted Metal 4 brings the series back to its roots. And I don't know what the hell that even means. Twisted Metal 1 was good, sure, but Twisted Metal 2 was definitely the benchmark to shoot for at that time. And Twisted Metal 3, however mediocre, didn't deviate too much from that formula. As a matter of fact, I'd argue that this game deviates, or attempts to deviate, more than that of 3. But I'll get into that later. In any case, I've rambled long enough. Let's just get right into it, shall we? Does anyone remember Twisted Metal 4? Right off the hop, I'll say that this game has one of the best, if not the best, intro cutscenes of the entire series. It recounts Calypso's visit to Sweet Tooth's village, probably around the early 1900s, judging by the vehicles. Sweet Tooth is just in awe of the carnage and runs away to join the tournament. And from what I gather, he wins multiple times, so obviously this game has pretty much nothing to do with previous entries. They didn't even try to shoehorn some continuity in there with the other drivers' backstories or whatnot, and that's probably a good thing. The overarching plot is more focused on Sweet Tooth and his rise to power. The bones of Twisted Metal's mini-plot structure are still there though. Each driver has their own unique reason for competing. When they win, Calypso grants their wishes, for better or worse. However, this time around, Sweet Tooth stages a coup de grace, steals the Ring of Souls from Calypso, chucks him out a window, and crowns himself master of the Twisted Metal tournament. And this is where the cracks start to show. The game brilliantly and stylishly sets up an opportunity for the narrative to branch off and do something different than that of its predecessors, but then they just snip those branches by placing Sweet Tooth in the exact same position as Calypso, doing the exact same thing. What a waste of all that setup. You'd think Sweet Tooth would make some absolutely insane changes to the tournament, but he just doesn't. And realistically speaking, as cool as the overarching plot could have been had it been fleshed out more, Twisted Metal doesn't really need all that extra fat in the narrative department. Personally, I prefer Calypso to be this omnipotent evil being who we don't know a whole lot about. It works. He only needs to act as a vehicle in which a resolution is delivered. This allows the stories of the individual cars and characters to shine in their own light, as they should and always have. Well, before 3. I believe wholeheartedly that these micro stories, these little connections between cars and characters that happen between and during the games are what make Twisted Metal so great. And speaking of cars and characters, I see no better time than now to talk about this game's roster. Twisted Metal 4's character lineup, not including the bosses, is entirely made up of new characters, aside from Warthog and maybe Captain Grimm, kinda. This is the only game in the entire series to do this. That being said, most of the new additions just feel like reskins of previously established characters. And aside from 3, all the unlockable characters are just remixes of returning vehicles. While it is nice to see a few familiar faces, it still feels more like a Twisted Metal ripoff than anything else. Furthermore, why axe the entire roster? The series' established characters and vehicles were unique, well crafted, and fleshed out, not to mention they had history and they were familiar to us, the player. Even Twisted Metal 3, for all of its faults, did not do this. Another gripe I have is that vehicles are treated as just that, vehicles. They all have names like Sleek Sports Car, Illegal Street Racer, Garbage Truck. They're all just very generic. Whereas in previous games, Bruce Cochrane drives Thumper, Simon Whittlebone drives Mr. Slam, Needles Kane drives Sweet Tooth, Marcus Kane drives Roadkill. The vehicles meant enough to the drivers who customized and armed them to merit a name. Twisted Metal 4 has none of that. That being said, this game does have what is, in my opinion, the best rendition of the Warthog vehicle throughout the entire series, a World War I British land ship. I think it most closely resembles the Mark V. In any case, it's badass, real badass. However, I totally understand why this version was ditched in the long run. It makes Minion's tank look like a child's toy. Anyway, now that I've got that out of the way, let's actually go over the roster. Keep in mind, this game is not considered canon, nor does it tie into any of the previous games. The next time any of these characters would be seen again is in the Twisted Metal TV show. To start, we have Orbital. He drives the sleek sports car and wishes simply to fix his face. His special is a freeze orb that has a rotating beam that pulls enemies in. It behaves similarly to Club Kid's special from Twisted Metal 3. Beyond that, there's not much to say. This character is incredibly generic. Pizza Boy drives the illegal street racer. His wish is to be the best street racer? Okay, that seems kinda normal. Again, I feel like you don't need the Twisted Metal tournament to achieve this. His special is actually quite unique. He shoots 2 homing saw blades that explode on impact. While not groundbreaking, I do really like this special for its visual appeal alone. Captain Grimm is this game's Mr. Grimm, surprise surprise, but aside from name and wish, there are 0 similarities. His wish is to duel Sweet Tooth to the death with swords and hopes to steal his soul. Seems pretty on brand for Mr. Grimm. But what about his appearance? The iterations we've seen thus far are of a rider cloaked in black or a zombie-like demon. Spooky. Here though, see for yourself. Yeah, he's a fucking skeleton pirate with a talking parrot who drives a shrunken parade float. What the fuck, man? He looks like an animatronic for children's birthday parties. Again, Mr. Grimm is typically the darkest character in the game, and look, I know it's technically not the same character, but still, what the fuck? You know? Earlier, I mentioned that in this game's story, Sweet Tooth tosses Calypso out of his own tower. Well, guess what? He's not dead. Instead, he's competing in the tournament. His wish is, obviously, to retake his throne. I will say, it's awesome to finally be able to play as Calypso, and having him drive a truck with a nuke on the back is very fitting when you take into consideration just who or what Calypso actually is, and what his motivations are. Furthermore, I consider Calypso to be the main character of this game. It's a revenge story after all. Only by playing as him can you truly see the main narrative play out and reach its natural conclusion, unlike the other games where there really is no overarching plot. Quattro drives the Xeon hoverbike, and unlike everyone else, he has no wish. He's simply competing for the bounties on the heads of the other contestants. His special is essentially Axel's special from Twisted Metal 2, a shockwave, nothing special. Goggle Eyes is the driver of Roach Coach. His wish is to kill all the bugs on the planet, although I don't really think he thought that one through. His special is a Toxic Blast that behaves similarly to Firestarter's Flamethrower special from Twisted Metal 3. Meter Maid drives a 3-wheeled meter car. Her special is basically Outlaws, only hers steals health. Her wish is to simply give something to Sweet Tooth, which turns out to be a fine in the millions. I think it's a parking ticket or something. Sweet Tooth can either pay it or perform a few minutes of community service for her. I'm a level with ya, Meter Maid is kinda slooty, and her victory cutscene heavily implies that she wants some hanky-panky from the Mad Clown himself. And in the end, Sweet Tooth agrees to the community service. Last we see, he's in driver's ed. Well, you got me, Twisted Metal 4. Let me put my lotion away. General Warthog is the driver of the World War I tank called Trojan, and it's so badass. As I've said, this is my absolute favorite iteration of Warthog. Unfortunately, Warthog's special absolutely sucks. Those awesome signature Patriot missiles would have been the perfect fit for this vehicle, by the way, have been swapped for some orbital strike thing. It's basically a glorified landmine. The general's wish is to command an old school army with no equal. Oh, also that uses no technology. Microblast is the short king that drives the toy car. He wishes to be taller. His special is a more powerful rapid speed missile, I think. Out of all the cars in this Twisted Metal and the 3 before, I think this vehicle is the most useless one. Even more useless than Twisted Metal 2's Grasshopper. There's not much else to say, moving on. Trash Man drives a, surprise surprise, garbage truck. His wish is to turn the world into a landfill. I mean, all he really has to do is wait about 10 years, then the world kind of becomes a landfill anyway, but anyway. His special is, no joke, a complete copy of Mr. Slam's. Look. I guess they ran out of ideas. The Joneses are the drivers of the family wagon. Their wish is for a new RV, but hold the phone. They're willing to kill and maim and destroy and sow chaos for a new RV? At that point, why not just steal one? I'm sure that's what Cousin Eddie did. Plus, wouldn't that be much easier? Like, a lot easier? It's almost not even worth getting into. Anyway, the family wagon's special is just 3 missiles that are different color. Kinda reminds me of Warthog's Patriot missiles. Drag Queen, or Petunia, is the driver of the Hot Rodder. His wish is to headline an all-girl show in Las Vegas. The vehicle itself is essentially Thumper with a new skin. The reason I say that is because of its special. It shoots a line of flame directly out in front of it. One thing's for sure though, it's good to have that 1-2 punch back, even if it is kind of underpowered. And fun fact, Petunia is one of the 2 characters from this game that appear in the Milkman bar scene in the Twisted Metal TV show, The More You Know. In my Twisted Metal 3 video, I praised the marrying of Rob Zombie and Twisted Metal, and no doubt it's an awesome pairing. And apparently the devs over at 989 thought so too, because Rob Zombie not only makes a return in the musical department, but he's also a playable character this time around. His vehicle is appropriately named Dragula. Pretty fucking metal if you ask me. His wish is for man to hear the wails and war cries of a dead man's soul? Does he mean him? Is he saying he wants people to hear his music? That's a really odd way of guilting people into buying your CD. It's not important. The important thing is that it's Rob fucking Zombie. His special is a demon skull with a rotating laser that draws enemies in before exploding. Well, that's all the characters that are available by default. Luckily, Twisted Metal 4 doesn't have any truly locked characters like the previous games did. And all you have to do to unlock them all is beat the game 1 time. The unlockables are Sweet Tooth, Crusher, Moonbuggy, RC Car, Axle, Super Auger, Minion, Super Thumper, and Super Slam. None have any wishes, and aside from Sweet Tooth, Axle, and Minion, we never get told the identity of any of the drivers. As such, there isn't a whole lot to say about any of these bosses. Super Auger, Super Slam, Super Thumper, Minion, and Axle are all more or less familiar, only this time around they're more powerful, obviously, but still, if you've played the previous games, you get the gist. I do, however, want to go into a bit of detail about Sweet Tooth, as is standard with these videos. In this game, he kinda looks like a lady of the night. He looks like he's about to put on a leather gimp suit, get on stage and pole dance to an EDM rendition of Country Roads. Also, it's implied that Calypso gave Sweet Tooth his flaming hair in this game's version of the story. His ice cream truck has also been pimped out, complete with a new, incredibly overpowered special. He shoots out 3 floating clown heads that home in through walls and floors, like Spectre's special. One drags you in, another fires missiles, and the third sprays fire. And it lasts forever. It can almost one-shot most vehicles in the game. This alone makes the final fight against him incredibly difficult, but more on that later. Lastly, on the topic of vehicles, this game has a character creator, and spoiler, I don't really like it. I have the same issue with the feature in this game as I did with it in Celebrity Deathmatch, and that is, why would I ever choose to create a car over using existing handcrafted and more interesting options? Its only redeeming factor is that it's the only way to pseudo play as Hammerhead in this game, but beyond that, all the vehicle combos are vastly inferior and lifeless in comparison to what's already on offer. The custom characters just have no soul. And let's be clear, I'm not against a character or car creator in a Twisted Metal game. This feature would have been perfect for Twisted Metal 3. You're still a member of a faction, but in a custom car, which would make complete sense within that context. Not to mention the absolute truckload, pun intended, of options you'd have on more modern hardware with more memory. You could unlock more parts as you play, knock them off of other cars and collect them, it would be the shit. But the main draw in Twisted Metal 4's case are the vehicles and the drivers, which are handcrafted. Granted, some better than others, but the point stands. In the end, instead of a character creator, I'd much rather have had a few more original characters or even levels. Speaking of, the levels in Twisted Metal 4 are actually not bad. Well, most of them. The first level, Construction Yard, is, in my opinion, actually pretty damn good. It is, at its core, just a large square, but it has a lot of verticality and it's not overly large. The conveyors with hazards are fun, and the crane in the middle is controllable, which is really cool. You can pick up cars and drop them on the conveyors to deal either fire or acid damage. The only downside to that is that you very easily get bumped out of the crane by other drivers. Overall, not a bad first level. Neon City kinda reminds me of Hong Kong Crunch with its narrow streets, tall buildings, and monorail track. Only here it kinda feels like you're just driving between massive pillars. The buildings and just overall playable area lack detail. The backdrop looks nice though. On the streets, the fighting is, for the most part, claustrophobic and tense. Unfortunately for me, Warthog doesn't really have that agility, and I found myself getting stuck on the level geometry all too often. If you drive through the monorail tunnel, you can get up onto the rooftops. It's a bit more open, sure, but the AI don't really hang around ever. They usually just grab something and then drive off. Road Rage reminds me of Freeway Free-For-All from Twisted Metal 1, and just like with Freeway Free-For-All, I find Road Rage to be way too large. So much so that on my playthrough as Warthog, I spent a solid 45 seconds without seeing a single enemy. I mean, the level is just a messy cacophony of nonsensical freeways that twist and loop together. This wouldn't be so bad if the AI actually spread out, but typically they all just bunch up in one small area and just malinger. I find that this level and Neon City are the two weakest levels in the game. But luckily for us, the bedroom is next, and this is where the levels really start to get good. As the name suggests, you're fighting in a bedroom. Now I know what you're thinking, must be one gargantuan bedroom, right? Well, it seems that we've been shrunk down. How did we shrink? Who knows, but let's not get bogged down with the details. This level really reminds me of Toy Story, or better yet, Army Men Sarge's Heroes. You can blow up a boombox to go between the walls, there are Hot Wheels tracks everywhere, it's great. My only gripe again is how often I got stuck on the level geometry, especially when trying to drive on the Hot Wheels tracks. Amazonia 3000 BC is next, and it's a great level. It's not overly large, and it has a good balance of open areas and claustrophobic paths, plus some verticality. There's a large stone obelisk thing in the middle, and on either side are pseudo-platforming sections, one of which leads to a portal that takes you to the second level of the central obelisk. Also, I just really like the lighting on this level, especially around the central obelisk and the icy tunnel with lit braziers. Most importantly though, the level plays really well and caters to all playstyles. Oil Rig is another level with an extreme amount of verticality. It kinda reminds me of Calypso's Blimp. This is also the only level in the game with insta-death pitfalls. This is a dual-edged sword. On one side, you can fall to your death often if you're not careful, but on the other hand, placing proxy mines next to the edges of platforms or on the helipad even is a good way to cheese some easy kills. Aside from that, there's not a whole lot to say. Oil Rig is simply decent. The second last level is Minions Maze, and this one for me is a mixed bag. On one hand, visually the level looks amazing. The textures all look great and are very detailed, and I love the lighting in certain areas, like around the various toxic goo pits. Also, the backdrop looks amazing. I just dig the overall aesthetic, but mechanically, as a deathmatch arena, it's more frustrating than anything else. As the name suggests, it's a maze, and apparently it's a good one too because I got lost a bunch. I'd spend minutes just looking for another driver. See, the middle is where you want to go. It's also the highest point of the level with the best pickups, so naturally the AI congregate there. Unless you're near one of the teleporters in each of the level's 4 corners, in which case they congregate there instead, and just keep following you through the portals. I've already mentioned that getting stuck on the level geometry is a huge issue in this game, and this level is where it's at its absolute worst. I can't seem to drive 10 feet without getting stuck on some random bullshit. And that's the thing with this level. level. It has everything it needs to be a damn good level. Unfortunately, it's just a pain in the ass to traverse. The Carnival is the final level, and compared to the others, it's pretty basic. It's more or less just a large oval featuring a few tents, a haunted house, and a ring of fire. You can drive through the haunted house for some pickups and access to the roller coaster that surrounds the level, but beyond that, there isn't a whole lot else to say about it. It's a decent level, sure, but not jaw-dropping. The real draw is the final showdown with Sweet Tooth, and he's incredibly difficult to beat. His special just constantly accosts you and deals boatloads of damage, and you had better pray he doesn't corner you in a tent. If he does, you may as well just restart the level, cause you ain't making it out alive. Come to think of it, Minion was no slouch either, and realistically, they're probably the two most difficult boss fights in the series thus far. Aside from Twisted Metal 2's Darktooth, he was a bitch. And while we're talking bosses, this is probably a good time to mention that every level in this game has its own boss. These battles operate similarly to the previous games. You clear the level of enemies, then the boss spawns, and I gotta be honest, fighting a boss every few levels is fine. It makes sense, and it keeps it tense. But having to do so after every single level just got irritating as hell. The bosses are so shoehorned in and common, they add nothing to the experience in the end. Like when you fought Darktooth in Twisted Metal 2, you're fucking fighting Darktooth. You know what I mean? It's like this is the big Kahone, the final boss, or Minion in Twisted Metal 1 even. But by the time I got to Sweet Tooth in this game, it was just like, oh, here's another boss, you know? It didn't really do anything. Twisted Metal 4 has a pretty decent spread of weapons. I won't go into too much detail over them all because most of which we've seen and become familiar with over the past 3 games. But one thing I will say quick is that they definitely feel better to use in this game over Twisted Metal 3. We of course have the machine gun and the Twisted Metal trio consisting of the homing, fire, and power missile. Beyond that, we've got the ricochet, lightning, napalm, remote bomb, freeze remote, proxy mine, mortar, speed missiles, and rain. Again, none of which are new to the franchise. However, there are a few weapons that are new, and I like to consider them tier 2 weapons as they're very powerful and mostly always hidden away with a big health pickup in a secret room or something. They consist of the Rain 2, the Merv, and the Auto Lob. The Rain 2 is basically the rain missile, only the rain homes in on enemies. The Merv is a missile that shoots other homing missiles. It's great for shooting around corners or over obstacles. Lastly, the Auto Lob is a rapid fire mortar that deals massive damage. The difficult part with the Auto Lob is you're very highly likely to hit yourself with it. But if you can land all the shots on the enemies, it's devastating. Altogether, with the added energy attacks, Twisted Metal has a lot of cool and varied tools to sow carnage with. You know what? I didn't actually hate this game, and I'll be honest, I was expecting to, but there are actually a lot of things I really do enjoy about it. The levels, aside from Neon City and Road Rage, all look great and are a blast to play. The lighting on Amazonia and Minion's Maze look particularly awesome. The intro cutscene is absolutely wicked, showing Sweet Tooth work his way up over the years, starting as a weird kid who ran from home to join the circus and ending with him becoming the ringleader himself. And don't get me wrong, this game is no Twisted Metal 2, but it's definitely better than 3. On the same note, there are a few things that I really didn't like about it. For example, the roster. On one hand, I like the inclusion of Calypso as a playable character, plus this game has my favorite iteration of Warthog, and let's not forget the addition of Rob Zombie, which is excellent. But at the same time, the character creator is awful, and just shouldn't be a thing. Orbital is just a bootleg Spectre, Microblast is absolutely useless. Trashman and Drag Queen are just reskins of Mr. Slam and Thumper respectively, and Captain Grimm...
What the hell is even that?
But even those issues aside, the roster in this game is by and large very forgettable. And having most of the bosses just be bastardized super versions of established characters instead of new original ones was also just a slap in the face. They would have been much better off serving as normal playable characters. Another, and perhaps my most major issue with Twisted Metal 4 is constantly getting stuck on the level geometry. If I'm anywhere near the edge of a platform, I seem to just get stuck. It almost seems like the true edge of the platform is an entire vehicle length off from what it is visually. This is most prevalent and irritating on, you guessed it, Minion's Maze. I probably mentioned it already, but traversing that level was an absolute nightmare. But what about all of you? Did you remember Twisted Metal 4, or did you skip this one entirely? Who's your favorite character or car in the franchise thus far? Let me know in the comments. And hey, look at us. We came together, demonstrated great strength and courage, stuck it out through any and all adversity, and got through Twisted Metal 3 and 4 unscathed. Well, mostly. But man, what a relief. These two were such a slog. I'm sure it's nothing but smooth sailing from here on out. Okay, one more, and then it's smooth sailing. As for me, I'm out. I reprogrammed my TV remote to work on my neighbor's TV, so I'm gonna go sit on my roof and change his channels every few minutes. I don't know, maybe I'll rent an adult film or something. Anyway, thanks for watching, and have yourself a wonderful day.